All right. Welcome, 10th graders, and welcome to the second half of our distance learning Rome unit. So, when we left off, Julius Caesar's nephew Octavian has taken over as the leader of Rome. He's claimed the title Augustus, or Exalted One, and he becomes Rome's first true emperor. And under Augustus, Rome is ruled as an empire. The Senate still meets, but the emperor has all the real power. So let's compare and contrast as a start here the Roman Republic and the Roman Empire. In the Roman Republic, who is in charge? Well, elected officials are. How long are they? How long do they get to rule? They get to rule for 1 year unless they're reelected. And how do new leaders take power? They are appointed by the Senate. And so that gives you an idea of how the republic works. Well, the empire, who leads? The emperor leads. How long do they rule? They rule for life, although a lot of them are assassinated, right? If somebody's ruling for life and other people don't like them, well, how do they end that reign? They kill them. And how do these new leaders take power? Well, they do it through inheritance or by force, right? Either when Uncle Caesar dies, Octavian takes over because he's next in line, or by having access to a bigger army. So the republic ends, right, when these powerful generals seize control over the government. After about 20 years of civil war, a new government is established, and the Roman Empire has begun. Now, the Roman empires are generally put into two different groups, right? You have the good emperors and the bad emperors, and the reality of it is it's probably never that simple. So Caligula, mentally disturbed. Nero, who's supposedly a good administrator but quite vicious. He murdered a bunch of people, persecuted a lot of Christians. Supposedly Nero was fiddling while Rome burned. Domitian, he ruled dictatorially. He feared treason everywhere and executed a whole bunch of people. But then you also have the good ones. Nerva, who begins a custom of adopting their heir. Trajan, who's under whom the empire reaches its greatest extent. He undertakes this vast building program. He enlarges social welfare. Hadrian, who consolidates earlier conquests. He reorganizes the bureaucracy. Antonius Pius reigns largely in a period of peace and prosperity. Marcus Aurelius brings the empire to the height of economic prosperity. He defeats invaders. He writes a bunch of philosophy. Suffice it to say, the good emperors and bad emperors, right? It makes some sense when you have hundreds of years where people are in charge, where you have emperors in charge. You're going to roll the dice. Some of them are going to be good, and some of them are going to be bad. So here is, and I know you've seen this before last week, but we're going to spend a little more time on this. This is this is the timeline of Rome, right? There's archaic Rome under the kings. We didn't really talk about that. Then there's the Roman Republic, right, from about 500 BCE up to just before AD 1. And that Roman Republic comes to an end when this period of Roman civil war, right, comes to an end, and you have Augustus Caesar or Octavian taking over. And then we have this period called Pax Romana. It's a period of over 200 years, right? And where Rome is at peace, right? Pax is Latin for peace. Romana is, Roman. So it is Roman peace. The 41-year reign of Augustus Caesar marks the beginning of that 207-year era of peace, wealth, and expansion. And then, of course, you expand to a point, and then things start to deteriorate. And when Rome finally falls in the late 400s, that's the beginning of the Middle Ages or the Dark Ages. So the Roman Republic first expands beyond Italy and starts taking over those other territories. And you can see here during the Pax Romana, Rome has expanded to its height, and it's brought huge wealth to Rome. And that those lines, the purple lines, are the Roman road, and then the sea routes are marked in days. This is a pretty cool map. You should pause the video, take some time to look at it. But Pax Romana becomes the golden age of Rome, right? As emperors like Augustus build roads and a merit-based bureaucracy to rule the empire. So the people who are in charge are the people who deserve to be in charge, who are good at their work. And this is a picture of the Roman road. When we talk about the Roman army as a legion, we think about them as a fighting force, but the Roman army doesn't just conquer the empire, it also builds these massive roads. And you can really see how the roads are built. And some of these roads, the Roman roads were so well constructed that there are still places today where these roads are still there, fully functional, right? The Roman roads are so well put together that they have lasted for 2,000 years in some instances. And this is how the Romans maintained their empire, right? We talked a little bit about the royal road, of Darius III, right, of the Persian Empire. Well, the Romans have taken this idea to a whole nother level, right? If the royal road was good, and that's one road connecting a huge empire, the Romans build this massive network connecting the entirety of their empire to itself. And so what this means is trade throughout the Roman Empire works real good. And if the Roman army needs to get somebody somewhere in their empire to deal with problems, they can do that too. And the Romans are also bringing water into their cities, right? Fresh water into a city is really, really important. When you have huge numbers of people living together, you have to figure out a way to make sure that they can stay clean. And so the Romans are doing these huge construction projects to bring that water into the city as well. And you can see here some of the ways that's done. And not only that, but Roman architecture, if you take a look at this, that architecture, right? We talked about why Hellenistic culture was important, how it still affects us today. Rome is probably why it still affects us today. The Romans copy their architectural style from the Hellenistic, the Greek and Persian styles. They take those and they copy it along. And you can see that right here. Those themes that you can see in their architecture of these pillars with statues on top, of these pillars holding up these temple-like structures. If you go to Washington, D.C., you will see buildings like this. The United States government has taken the United States has taken a lot of its ideals from this Roman, their visual ideals from this Roman architecture. It really, if you want a way to demonstrate power and authority of the state, there's really you can do a lot worse than with these strong pillars with Roman style architecture. Not only that, but they're building these massive domes, right? They're really beautifying their cities and doing these really incredible construction projects. Perhaps the most impressive of which, or one of the most impressive of which, is the Colosseum, maybe the first truly massive stadium that the world has ever seen. Just an enormous place where they hold games. And of course, the games they hold are these gladiatorial matches. And of course, sometimes these would end in death. Not only that, but they also are taking theater, right? We talked about how the Greeks had developed theater. Well, the Romans are jumping on board with that, and they're doing theater as well. And not only that, but they have another massive stadium where they are literally doing chariot races. If you haven't seen the movie Ben-Hur, watch the original. It's better. There's an example of that. That sort of chariot race there too, right? We think of the Colosseum as being the only thing the Romans were doing. They were also watching these chariot races. Of course, these would get quite violent as well. So what are our conclusions, right? Rome expands from a city to a republic to an empire. The era of the Roman Republic introduces representative democracy, where the Roman Empire sparks this golden age of peace, of Roman innovation and culture, where they expand and take over all of these territories. You can see there's a timeline over here on the left. If you'd like to take a look at that, you can feel free. But things are going to start falling apart here pretty quick. And that brings us through to the end here.